the quicker you get comfortable with judgment of others, the more likely you'll be successful long term. Getting knocked down and then having the adversity to readjust to what you got caught on and navigating it to easily win a fight is remarkable. That's how I think about entrepreneurship. If I genuinely wake up in the morning and 8 to 10 people are actually still alive, I'm just struggling to be upset about stuff.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like 9 and 9. For my top 10, top 10, 9 and 9. This one's for my top 10.
I will never fail because there is no failure. The at-bat is the macro win. If I lost all my money because I did 37 ridiculously bad decisions and over-leveraged myself, the ability to go back to zero and try to like buy shit at the dollar store and flip it on eBay and build it back up weirdly excites me more than where I am right now. I swear on my children's health.
No kidding.
The thought of going to zero, having all of you judge me as, see, he wasn't as good as you thought, and then rising back like a phoenix and sticking it in your face excites the shit out of me. I believe that right there is the definition of entrepreneurship. It's when you love your game more than what the game gives you. That's why I like losing. The game told me I lost. Respect to the game. When you're 10 years old, confidence is a very funny thing. You're still forming as a human, but the reality is if you're twitching and you're over responding to how many subscribers you have or what your friends in school are saying, you're not going to be able to be successful. And so you're lucky, Giovanni, to be able to start this process now, not when you're 45 years old. The quicker you get comfortable with judgment of others, the more likely you'll be successful long term. The way to get your confidence up is to start enjoying the pushback, is to start enjoying people say that you can't, is to start enjoying the judgment of others who don't understand. If you're not comfortable in your own framework, you'll never succeed. I think the thing that I'm conscious of is off the screen, I'm real happy too, right? Like, you know, I think one thing that's really been interesting is as awareness around an individual grows, a level of responsibility comes along with it. I'm definitely at a point right now where I'm really being thoughtful of like, look, there's a lot of eyes on me and a lot of people who are not happy are putting their eyes on me and I'm helping them through that. And I need to be hyper sensitive in my own self of articulating things that I'm unhappy about. But what's been really interesting is I've been really on this kick for 6 or 9 months. I'm struggling to be unhappy because I've come to realize it's unbelievable how simple my life is. If I genuinely wake up in the morning and 8 to 10 people are actually still alive, I'm just struggling to be upset about stuff. I don't know what else to say. I struggle with, my perspective on life is very simple, which is it's such a blessing. It's so rare, you know? Last time we were here, I made a video with you guys, and in there, I talked about the 400 trillion to 1, and in that micro piece of content, which I've chopped up and used, it's one of my most successful piece of content ever, happened in this building a couple years ago. And I've always internalized it. I finally articulated it a couple years ago, and I continue to internalize it, which is, I am happy because I'd like to understand, I'd like somebody to sell me on what to be upset about. I'm not sure anybody is taking enough risk from 20 to 30. Yeah. It is the most interesting thing that I've been thinking about, which is it is never more practical to be disproportionately risky than from 22 to 30, yet everybody goes the other way because now they're the real world and it's time to prove something to their parents, to themselves, to everybody else, and everybody goes conservative. It is a huge mistake. We need to flip it upside down. Everybody should go ham from 22 to 30 and do a ton of ridiculous shit and figure themselves out. But on your own dime, not your parents.
There's the parents clapping.
So how I think about it is you should go and be rogue and get to know yourself and taste from 22 to 30, but you have to live by the ramifications of doing that. And the cost of entry of that is living with 4 people in a studio apartment, eating dog shit food and not having fancy shit. When you go and do that, but you're being subsidized by your parents, then you're living in a fake environment and you're super We're really into a new era of opportunity. You know, to me, the white space that technology continues to create and always will is really a thing that most businesses and people struggle with, because the reality is that most people think about things based on what has already happened instead of being able to understand what's about to happen, which is ironic because what's about to happen is already happened in history many times over. It's just you have to understand the pattern recognition and deploy it against the current state. And so for me, if you understood that jargon, for me, what is really interesting is that no matter who you are in this room today, the one thing I know we can talk about is attention of the person you're trying to reach. My entire career, I've come to realize, has been pretty simple. I've been chasing the attention of who I'm trying to reach, and that has worked for me since I was 6 years old. You know, probably my favorite entrepreneurial story for me, about me to myself, like in my own head, is when I started my lemonade stand business, I manipulated my friends to work the, lemonade stands themselves. I kind of scoured the streets of Edison, New Jersey. And if you think about how sick or interesting, what I'm about to say is, it was interesting to me. It was fun for me to stand on the grassy knoll or on the corner and spend hours watching cars drive by to try to figure out which tree or which pole was the best one for me to put my lemonade sign on to sell more lemonade. That was intriguing to me. That was exciting for me. And 37 years later, I stand here in front of you in the same place, which is, where is the attention of who I'm trying to reach? I've now lived, 2 hardcore careers that really map this room. The first 15 years of my career was hardcore consumer, right? Brick and mortar store, internet business at scale. I built Wine Library on the back of email marketing. How many people here have done or do email marketing in their careers? Just raise your hands. Just hi, please. This is just gonna be fun for me to say. Like in 1996, I had a 300,000 person email newsletter that had 93% open rates. And I built my dad's business from a $3 to a $60 million business in a 7-year period with no cash infusion, no VC, not even a credit line. And it was because I made every penny work like $1. And in 1996, that was actually having a website when everybody else was sending catalogs in the mail. That was having an email newsletter, which, for the kids in the room, like, you have to understand, like, people thought the whole internet was a fad, let alone email marketing, right? And then later, the one that really scaled me, which was the day Google AdWords started, I bought ads at 5 cents a click and owned every wine term in the world. And it's really interesting, at some point I'm gonna mention this. I would argue that one of the things that drives me tremendously is the great miss of my career during the great success of my career. I was so right about Google AdWords, but I'd never been through a pattern of buying very underpriced attention at scale that I didn't spend enough money on Google AdWords. Like when some of you, and I know some of you that I know well, like when you hear 3 to 60, I'm very proud of that, but genuinely, I know I left 100 million in revenue on the table because I did too much direct mail, radio, television, outdoor, a mix of media. When it's funny to say this in Vegas, I don't play poker, but there's something that's very easy to understand. When you have the best hand and you know it, you go all in. I knew I had the best hand with AdWords. I just didn't, let me rephrase, in hindsight, I had the best hand. I knew it was great, I just didn't know how great it was. And so you can imagine when consumer, mobile, social, internet came along, the pattern recognition that I learned about email, which then became about Google AdWords, then I started legitimately one of the first 10 long form YouTube shows in the first months of YouTube, which was a 20-minute show of me tasting wine. Yeah, best gig I ever had in my career. I sat in front of a camera for 25 minutes, drank 4 bottles of wine, and it completely changed the course of my career. I think that's right, but I think right now we're in a very convenient state and everybody's throwing around judgment and blame like it's free. And we need to, I feel a huge sense of responsibility to articulate accountability, lack of entitlement, and positivity because I believe in it.
Yeah.
And I understand, by the way, it's funny, there's a very interesting thing going on here right now, which is there's an extraordinary amount of people that are content or happy, they just don't communicate, right? Like negativity by nature is louder, has always been. Your grandmother who's miserable was louder than your grandfather who's content. The problem is now words are being documented at scale. This has always been the way. There's nothing different right now. It's just that we can't look at our grandmother's tweets. If we could. I mean, my grandmother was one of the most super negative people I've ever come across in my life. In my life. Just unbelievably negative. Everything was negative. Every good thing that happened was a conspiracy theory. And I used to be mad at her, and then I had to remind myself as I got older and more thoughtful, I'm like, this is a woman who lived in the Soviet Union, who went through World War II, and who saw some shit, and who lost her husband, and who had because I knew my great-grandmother too, had a negative mother. And like, you become more empathetic as you become more thoughtful, but It doesn't take away from the fact that my grandma would have been spitting venom on Instagram if that shit was around in 1957. And so, like, I think we need to get into some real conversations. And right now, the conversations are lazy. Social media is bad. It's Apple's job to restrict it. And that's cool. I'm like fine with a level of like platform and government involvement. I'm fine with that. But like, you'll always be disappointed if you think some big force is gonna save you. Yeah. You'll always be disappointed. So just solve it for yourself. Let me tell you something about the market. The market is incredibly talented. You are over analyzing their inability to not know the truth.
You mean the market?
The net market. People leave comments on my all the time and always did too. People spend their whole life because they're hurting. People love to tear down things out of their own pain. You have a human or 2 or 5 or whoever this group is, most likely a very small group of 1 or 2 people who are so hurt.
It's their life mission.
But
it's hard to do.
I'm gonna try to help you. They have no say. Any person that believes their anonymous lies is not a piece of business that you want anyway. Got it? There are plenty of people who believe certain things about me, and that's lovely, because there's 7.7 billion people, and even if I keep crushing it in perpetuity, squeezing the f*** out of it, I will never get to even a fraction of it. Whatever you're losing from those pieces of shit have 0 impact on your upside. You just don't see it that way yet. Listen to me, if every single person in this room believed it, it's a drop in the bucket in the market. By the way, the second you stop giving it love and attention, the second it stops getting interesting for them. You're giving them the leverage. When you realize you have 99.999999999999999% of the world to focus on, they will get real quiet after you stop giving a f***. I'll tell you what's really emerged. Entitlement. I was parented in a really, and my circumstances put me in a place where I just don't think anybody owes me anything. Not society, not the government, not people I do nice things for. That's a killer.
Yeah.
People struggle so much when they do something nice for somebody, they think that person owes them something. I'm desperately trying to give more value to every person I ever cross paths with and never ask for anything in return. That is literally the framework of my life. My great hope is that I can bring more value to people than they bring to me, and I'm never in a dire situation where I ever have to ask for anything in return.
It's about failure and why it's important to fail.
I love it.
Yeah, because you mentioned
I
that you love it.
I love it. I like micro failure. I hate macro failure. Like, death of your business is bad. But to me, you know what's funny? I'll use a boxing analogy. My favorite boxing, I watch a lot of boxing. I think boxing's a very interesting, and I'm super into mixed martial arts, but I grew up on boxing, I understand it better. And I like watching it because there's so many things that happen in boxing. First of all, what I love about boxing is there's nowhere to hide. You know, like, it's super interesting, right? There's nowhere to hide. Number two, there's a scenario in boxing that I love the most. For some reason, there's nothing more interesting to me than watching somebody get knocked down in the first round and then go on to win the fight easily. It's an interesting psyche, right? And I like that, and this is what I'm thinking about it, which is like, here's what's bad in boxing and in business. Going into a fight, getting knocked the fuck out in the first round and losing the match. Bad. Getting knocked down and then having the adversity to readjust to what you got caught on and navigating it to easily win a fight is remarkable. That's how I think about entrepreneurship. The reason so many people struggle with entrepreneurship is you have micro failures almost daily, and they're very in your face. You can't hide. And I like that. I like failure because I think I deserve it. I hate when people don't respect the game. When I fail, it means I fucked up. And I like that because I think people get audacious. My number one thing that I hate about capitalism is that people use it and they love it and they're big capitalists and they love open market and competition and all that, and then they become 73 and they try to use all their money to protect their money. They're not willing to let a young lion eat them the way they ate somebody else. I hate when they try to manipulate it. That's what I love about sports. What I love about sports is when you're 36 and you were once the best player in the league, but now you're getting a little bit older and your body breaks down, you are forced to retire. The one thing that entrepreneurship and capitalism has to adjust to is once you get old and you're tired and you want to be on a yacht instead of working your shit, you should lose some money because you're losing. So many people are asking me, like, how do I live my dream, Gary? And I don't have time. I have mortgages and bills and responsibilities in my job. I don't have time for my side hustle, my Twitch channel, my Instagram account, my Shopify store selling hoodies. And I keep getting to this new place, which is, talk to me about your bills. Like, why'd you buy an apartment that stretches you? Why is your car so fancy? Like, why do you need the new Gucci every time? Like, why are you going out Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night? Like, why are you going to Coachella? Like, why are you going to Avengers opening night and buying the biggest piece of popcorn and candy? Like, the answer to all of your questions is not how much money you make or how much time you have, it's what you're spending your money on. Why do you want the newest pair of Yeezys? Why? Why? You're not entitled to your dream. You're not entitled. Nobody's entitled to be an amazing dancer. Nobody that tours the world and gets to dance and open for Beyonce and make $580 a year and live it and go to Monaco on the weekends. Like, it's not how it works. Everybody starts at zero. Some people start at different places, but anybody who does it for themselves has to sacrifice. Like, yes, like, move. Like, my city's expensive, move. Like, my car payments are high, sell your car and buy a piece of shit car, take the bus. This is dreams we're talking about. We're talking about dreams. We're talking about, like, I want to be a professional gamer. We're talking about, I want to get paid $200,000 to give a speech. We're talking about shit that isn't normal. Dreams require sacrifices. People don't want to sacrifice. Like, some reason, DNA, parenting, circumstance, I'm on the extreme end of everything's my fault. Nobody owes me shit. I shouldn't get anything unless I bleed for it. It's one big framework, D-Rock, of like, of self-esteem, lack of self-esteem / insecurity, entitlement or accountability. It's these huge things. I'm not judging people other than I'm asking people and I'm bringing up a different debate that isn't being talked about a lot, which is why do you want to go to Coachella? That's what I'm interested in.